Lee Duffy was a notorious figure in the northeast of England, widely feared for his involvement in organized crime. Hailing from Middlesbrough, Duffy was a prominent gangster who made a name for himself through various illegal activities, primarily in the drug trade. Despite his criminal notoriety, he was also known for his achievements as a boxer. Lee Duffy hailed from South Bank, a district in Middlesbrough, and became a notable figure in Teesside folklore due to his notorious criminal activities and high-profile connections. His name is particularly linked with the region's criminal history because of his close association with another well-known gangster, Stephen Sayers. Duffy and Sayers first crossed paths at a young age, specifically in 1982, while they were both incarcerated at Low Newton Remand Center. This early meeting laid the foundation for a lasting friendship between the two, who would later become prominent figures in the criminal underworld of Teesside. Their partnership and exploits have contributed to the mythos surrounding their lives, solidifying their places in local lore. Outside of his criminal exploits, Duffy's life has been the subject of several books and films that explore his complex and often dangerous lifestyle. The most recent portrayal of his life was the film Lee Duffy, Too Far Too Soon, which premiered in 2020, offering a cinematic glimpse into his troubled world. Duffy's criminal career was marked by numerous violent encounters and attempts on his life. Despite facing several assassination attempts, he managed to survive them all until his eventual death. His strength and resilience made him a formidable figure in the criminal underworld, but ultimately, it was a man he considered a friend who ended his life. Lee Duffy lived amidst the turbulence and danger of the drug trade, a world where honor was a rare commodity. His existence was marked by the brutal cycle of violence that ultimately claimed his life. Lee Duffy's life ended violently after multiple attempts on his life and a tragic confrontation with someone he trusted. Over the years, there were several failed assassination attempts against Duffy, including 2 shootings and an attempt to set him on fire. His story is a stark reminder of the perils of a life lived outside the law, where alliances can shift rapidly and old friends can become deadly enemies. Duffy's life came to a tragic end on August 25, 1991, during a brutal street brawl on Martin Road in Middlesbrough. At just 26 years old, he was fatally stabbed by David Allison, a man who had once been counted among his friends but had become a rival. The event not only marked the end of Duffy's reign as a feared figure in the criminal world, but also sent shockwaves through the local community. The sequence of events leading to Duffy's death began at a blues party held at the Afro-Caribbean Center. The party was meant to be a lively social event, but tensions quickly escalated. Duffy, who was heavily intoxicated and high on a mixture of cocaine, cannabis, and ecstasy, caused a scene. Witnesses described how Duffy, displaying his characteristic arrogance and aggression, ordered everyone to clear the way, creating a hostile atmosphere that set the stage for the ensuing violence. David Allison, who had been at the party, was soon drawn into the conflict with Duffy. The 2 men, who had known each other from their youth, took their dispute outside to the car park. A large crowd gathered to watch the confrontation, which quickly turned violent. Duffy, known for his physical prowess and reputation as a formidable fighter, initially dominated the fight. He was seen smashing Allison's head against the ground, causing significant damage. Allison, however, was not defenseless. Armed with a knuckle duster, he struggled to fend off Duffy's aggression. Despite his efforts, Allison was overpowered by Duffy, who appeared to have the upper hand. The situation took a critical turn when one of Allison's friends handed him a knife. With the blade in hand, Allison used it to stab Duffy in the left side, just beneath his armpit. The knife wound was severe, and Duffy fell to the ground, calling out for help. The scene was chaotic. Onlookers watched in shock as Duffy, a man known for his fearsome reputation, lay bleeding in the street. Emergency services arrived quickly, and Duffy was rushed to Middlesbrough General Hospital. Despite the best efforts of medical staff to stabilize him and stop the bleeding, Duffy succumbed to his injuries at 3:55 a.m. The circumstances surrounding Duffy's death stirred significant media interest and public debate. Allison, who had fled the scene, initially remained silent about the incident. However, the day after the fight, he contacted his father and confessed, "I think I've killed Lee Duffy." He then voluntarily turned himself in to the police. The confession led to his arrest and subsequent charge with murder. Allison's trial began at Teesside Crown Court in February 1993. The trial was a media spectacle, partly due to Duffy's notoriety and the dramatic nature of his death. During the proceedings, the court was presented with a detailed account of Duffy's violent past. Evidence revealed that Duffy had been involved in numerous criminal activities, including high-stakes Russian roulette games where he would spin a loaded revolver and declare himself invincible. This reckless behavior, combined with his intimidation tactics and involvement in the drug trade, painted a picture of a man who had lived a life on the edge. Allison's defense argued that the stabbing was an act of self-defense. He testified that he feared for his life during the altercation with Duffy, who was known to carry a gun and had a reputation for violence. The jury was asked to consider whether Allison's actions were justified given the circumstances of the confrontation. The verdict was delivered with a mix of relief and surprise. Allison was found not guilty of both murder and manslaughter. The courtroom erupted with cheers from Allison's supporters, while many in the public gallery reacted with disbelief. The decision highlighted the complex nature of self-defense claims and the challenges of legal adjudication in cases involving violent crime. Following Duffy's death, Middlesbrough's criminal underworld experienced a power vacuum. Duffy had been a significant figure in local crime, and his absence left a void that several individuals sought to fill. Around half a dozen men vied for control, each trying to assert dominance in the lucrative but perilous world of organized crime. This scramble for power underscored the ongoing instability within the criminal community, where alliances are fragile and power struggles are frequent. The aftermath of Duffy's death also highlighted the impact of violence on communities. His funeral attracted large crowds, and the streets of Middlesbrough were filled with mourners and spectators. The public reaction was a mixture of respect for Duffy's notorious reputation and concern about the violent circumstances of his death. In the broader context, Duffy's story serves as a poignant example of how a life of crime can lead to a dramatic and often tragic end. Despite his fearsome reputation and significant influence within the criminal world, Duffy's life was ultimately cut short by the very violence he had perpetuated. His death marked the end of an era in Middlesbrough's criminal history and reflected the brutal reality of a life lived on the edge of society. In reflecting on Duffy's life and death, we see the stark reality of how a life of crime can swiftly spiral into chaos. Despite his reputation and influence, Duffy's story ultimately serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of living a life driven by violence and criminal ambition. His demise not only marked the end of a notorious figure, but also served as a somber reminder of the unpredictability and danger that accompanies a life of crime. As Middlesbrough moved forward, the legacy of Lee Duffy remained a potent symbol of the risks and consequences inherent in the criminal world. His story is a vivid illustration of how violence begets more violence, and how even the most feared individuals can fall victim to the very dangers they have lived by.